When a game makes such an impact that it develops a strong fan base, critical praise, and financial success, the expectations placed upon a sequel are going to be very high. There will be pressure on the developers to both do something new in the follow-up that will differentiate it from and improve upon the original, while also not changing too much so that it loses what made the first game so appealing. The desire to know how Blasphemous 2 will compare to the incredibly high standards set by Blasphemous has further amplified the anticipation of this release. Before we get to breaking that tension, you can support honest indie game coverage that will let you know if games live up to the hype, as well as to learn about obscure games that deserve more attention by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. You will get early access to videos, exclusive videos and live streams, access to the internet's friendliest Discord gaming community, and more. Developed by the Game Kitchen and published by Team 17, players in Blasphemous 2 will again control the Penitent One as he strives to relieve the suffering brought upon the people of Custodia by the hands of the godlike being known as the Miracle. The game will begin by selecting one of 3 weapons to use, and each brings with it a unique fighting style as well as a special attack attached to each weapon by default that were previously available in Blasphemous as upgrades you could earn in the game. One of the weapons is a large flail that allows you to hold down the attack button to charge a more powerful attack, and also allows you to hit bells located throughout the game that will open up additional platforms for you to use and that can allow you to pass through or destroy metal barriers. Another weapon is twin blades that attack swiftly but do less damage than the other weapons. This includes the ability that allows you to attack while sliding and to also travel between mirrors located throughout the game by striking them. The third weapon is a sword that is the most balanced of the 3 weapons and most closely resembles the blade Mea Culpa that was used in the original game. This sword allows you to perform a downward attack while jumping that will cause fire damage near the point where it strikes the ground. While you only get to begin the game with one of these weapons, the other 2 will be available to find in other locations. So the weapon you choose will determine the order in which you will be able to explore certain areas, because each will allow you to bypass obstacles that will otherwise impede your progress, though you will eventually be able to explore the other sections after finding the additional weapons. The RPG elements of Blasphemous 2 are increased over the first game, and additional abilities can be obtained through purchasing them with martyrdom points, which act as both a form of currency and as a form of experience points. Some abilities can also be obtained with marks of martyrdom, which can be found, gained at intervals through defeating certain numbers of enemies, or purchased with martyrdom points. In addition to the rosary beads from the original that can provide buffs and additional abilities, there is now an altar that serves a similar function for additional perks. The spaces on the altar can be expanded by spending marks of martyrdom, and altar pieces can be found or purchased with martyrdom points. These perks include increasing the damage of various kinds of attacks, reducing the damage that enemies do to you, increasing the time to successfully perform a block, and many others that will be of great help. Executions are still present in Blasphemous 2, but instead of just being an intense way to finish off an enemy, they are now a key part of the combat system. Stunning an enemy when it has low health now brings up a prompt to perform an execution by pressing a certain button, and doing so will finish off the enemy, damage other enemies nearby, and give you a bonus to the martyrdom points earned from defeating an enemy. An ability can also be obtained to cause performing executions to refill the Penitent One's health, so this can become a crucial part of your combat strategy. Combat remains intense and visceral as it was in the original Blasphemous, but it feels even more engaging in Blasphemous 2 due to a choice of different weapons and strategic uses of executions. The enemy AI remains aggressive and enemies will frequently attempt to swarm you, but players could learn to use the enemy's aggression to their advantage and lure enemies away from the others to pick them off one by one, or to hit grouped enemies with attacks that will damage all of them at once. Developing strategies for handling various enemies and situations is vital to success here. Blind button mashing will likely only bring you a swift death. Boss fights are especially engaging and feel a bit more intense than in the first game, even if many deaths may occur as you gradually learn the boss's patterns and where the safe spots are to evade attacks that might take up much of the screen. There is a great sense of satisfaction and accomplishment when you finally emerge victorious, and feel like you have genuinely become skilled enough to deserve to win. Another new feature is the addition of animated cutscenes, as well as the use of hand-drawn art and non-animated cutscenes. This use of mixing animated scenes into a pixel art game has a nostalgic charm for me, as it reminds me of how this approach was used in some disc-based games from the 16-bit and 32-bit eras, though the execution of this approach is obviously of much higher quality here. The The effect it has on the experience makes it feel as if the player is even more deeply discovering Custodia and its lore, and is a very welcome addition to the game in my eyes. Custodia itself is a fascinating location to explore, filled with Gothic imagery that accurately portrays it as a land that is cursed and filled with suffering and desperation. Both the environments and the characters take a lot of inspiration from Western art, both in depictions of religious iconography and portrayals of the grotesque in medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque art. Meeting the characters who inhabit Custodia and discovering its lore is also exciting to experience. Seeing and hearing those cursed by the miracle and how they react to their situations is always interesting, as there will be those who hold on to some form of hope as well as those who have resigned themselves to an existence of suffering, even some who believe it will continue after death. The graphics and overall visual presentation are amazing. Both the pixel art and the hand-drawn cutscenes are gorgeous and perfectly fit the tone of the game. The music is also excellent, mostly continuing the approach of the original, with pieces featuring guitar, piano, strings, and synths that create a dark and melancholy atmosphere. But feeling a bit more cinematic here, and in a very good way. The controls are very tight and spot on, which is very important for the gameplay here, where precision is important and mistakes can be deadly. Even with all of the adversity the player will face, taking damage and deaths will feel like mistakes that must be learned from, rather than cheapness in design. Overall, Blasphemous 2 plays just as great as it looks and sounds. Blasphemous 2 creates an immersive world filled with horrific imagery, an oppressive atmosphere, and a steep difficulty, but in a way that feels wonderful and thrilling to experience. Playing Blasphemous 2 is akin to witnessing an alchemical transmutation of the seemingly negative into something very positive to behold and experience. It is beautiful in its brutality, and all the more captivating and memorable because of it. As Blasphemous is one of my personal favorite games, my expectations for Blasphemous 2 were extremely high, so I was both very excited and somewhat concerned going into this one. Though I can say with great pleasure that my expectations weren't just met, they were exceeded, and Blasphemous 2 is not just the best game I have played this year, but is one of the best games I have played in all my years of gaming. As someone who started out playing on an Atari 2600 in the 80s, that is saying a lot. So it is with great enthusiasm that I award Blasphemous 2 a Golden Genie because it excels on every level. For those who can handle the challenge, I give this the highest recommendation. Fans of Metroidvanias and Souls-likes will find plenty to enjoy here. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to join us on Patreon at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames to support clickbait-free indie game coverage and to help us continue fighting the echo chamber that brings you game coverage without the heart.